On this episode, we're talking about Narsil! Disclaimer, I am not an elf. I am not even half elven. I'm going to pronounce a lot of words incorrectly and you're just going to have to deal with it. If you're only familiar with the films, then your knowledge of Narsil is probably pretty limited. But for having roughly 2 seconds of screen time, there's actually a lot of lore about the Sword of Elendil. And since the movies don't really tell us who Elendil is, let's start there. Elendil the Tall was the king of the Númenóreans in Middle-earth at the end of the Second Age. And if you don't know who the Númenóreans are, that's fine. Just know that he was like the king of men in Middle-earth after the downfall of Númenor. There's Númenor. Men lived there. They were greater than the men on Middle-earth. That's where Elendil's from. That's what Elrond was talking about.
The blood of Númenor is all but spent.
It'd be a lot easier if you just read the Silmarillion. What was I talking about? The films focus on Isildur, Elendil's son, to make things simpler, I guess. I mean, I know he cut the ring from Sauron's hand, or he took the ring, or whatever. But they're always talking about Isildur, or going on about
Isildur's heir.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Anyways, Isildur wasn't all he's cracked up to be, but Elendil was the man. It was he who wrestled with Sauron at the Battle of the Last Alliance. Aragorn shouts his name when he runs into battle. Everyone mentions Elendil's heir in the books, not Isildur. Anyways, back to Narsil. Let's talk about its name. Every name in Tolkien's world has an actual meaning, and Narsil is no different. The direct translation seems to be red and white flame, but the name is also a combination of the names of the sun and moon, Anar and Isil, which makes sense. The sword is often described as shining with the red light of the sun and the white light of the moon. Elendil even names his two sons Anarion and Isildur, and they
took the little ones.
No, you're confused, man. Those were orcs. Stop interrupting me. And they even went on to name their two cities Minas Anor and Minas Ithil, which are the Sindarin names for the sun and moon. Alright, now you slow coaches know where the name comes from, but where did the sword come from? Well, according to Aragorn, it was wrought by Telkar, the most famousest of dwarven smiths during the First Age, which means it's thousands of years old. But that's all we really know. How the sword came to Elendil is something of a mystery. Some might say that Narsil was given to one of the elder houses of men back in those times and was passed all the way down to Elendil. But that doesn't make much sense. Elendil's family wasn't directly in line with the kings of Númenor. They were kind of off to the side. I mean, I guess it didn't have to belong to a king of Númenor. It could have just came to one of Elendil's forefathers. That's not very interesting though, is it? We have our own LOREMASTERS theory about the origins of Narsil, and it's based on several things. First and foremost, the dwarves never really had any dealings with men. It just didn't happen. In all these books, it never happened. But dwarves were said to hang out with elves from time to time, so it would make sense that Narsil was given to or made for an elf lord during the First Age. But which one? Well, there have been many great elf lords and kings throughout the ages of Arda, and almost all of them were said to have wielded a sword if they were ever in battle, all except one. And that would be none other than Gil-galad, the last High King of the Noldor. And when Elendil landed in Middle-earth after the downfall of Númenor, who did he meet up with and become super best friends with, and then fought and died in the Battle of the Last Alliance with? You guessed it, Gil-galad! We at LOREMASTERS believe that that's why Gil-galad used his spear Aeglos instead of a sword, because he gave it to Elendil as some kind of awesome token of friendship. This is also reinforced by the fact that Narsil isn't mentioned anywhere in the writings of Tolkien until after Elendil meets up with Gil-galad at the end of the Silmarillion.
Against Aeglos, the spear of Gil-galad, none could stand, and the sword of Elendil filled orcs and men with fear, for it shone with the light of the sun and of the moon, and it was named Narsil.
Narsil. We also believe that the sword may have belonged to elves because it seems kind of magical. As Sam would put it, the sword has elf magic. Whenever Narsil is described, it's said to shine or give off light, like every single time it's mentioned. So much so that in my mind it just kind of gives off light or glows, kind of like some other famous elven blades. There's even more of these descriptions after it was reforged as Anduril. Here they all are. Look at them. There's so many. Now, we already mentioned it being described as shining with the light of the sun and moon, but in this phrase from Lord of the Rings, it's said specifically to shine cold with the light of the moon. That sounds kind of familiar. Turns out those other magical elven blades that are known for glowing were described in a similar chilly fashion. Gandalf's sword Glamdring was said to shine with a cold light in the Lord of the Rings, as was Sting. And in the Silmarillion, Fingolfin's sword Ringel was said to glitter like ice. You know, the more I ramble on about this, the more it's starting to actually seem plausible. Okay, that's enough theory crafting. What else happened with Narsil? You all know the rest. It was reforged into Anduril, although that happened differently in the books, but that's a rant for another video. Whether Narsil had elf magic or not really doesn't matter, nor does it matter who Narsil belonged to other than Elendil, although it's fun to theorize. Its real importance was that it symbolized the return of the king, and I think that worked out pretty well. So that's all there really is to say about Narsil. But what should we talk about next? The lore of Lembas, the waybread of the elves? Ooh, perhaps we could talk about the 4 farthings of the Shire, or the 3 farthing stone. Oh, pick me! How about the Tower of Ortha? The f am I doing? Or maybe the Witch Realm of Ainmar. There's dwarf lore, the Reins of Power, Balrogs, the origins of Galadriel, or how about the Light of Arendelle? Who the heck is Arendelle? You know, I've always wanted to talk about spider lore and hobbit family trees, and you can't really discuss hobbits without discussing Mathams, or Second Breakfast,